you guys. I'm not really sure how my husband corrals everybody to their seats because I clearly don't pay attention to that part of his message. But we're going to get started if you've all got your donuts and your coffee and your waters and you've had your bathroom breaks and all that fun stuff. So Jeff's not here this morning because he's still in Santa Margarita camping with the boys. And I was re-listening to his message last night, and I realized he said something about me having a break while they're gone. And I laughed so hard because this week I had to work extra. Our dog had surgery, so I've been having to take care of my dog and fight him to take his medicine. And if you've never tried to get a dog who doesn't want to take medicine, if you've never had that experience, it makes you wish you had like twin toddlers that were sick. And then I co-hosted a bridal shower, and so I'm wondering what the break was my husband thought I was having this week. So I think I'm going to be having a little talk with him about what breaks look like, and maybe tell him, send me away. Not camping, but send me away. So he did, in the midst of all this crazy week, he asked me, he said, will you preach for me? We're preaching about our favorite stories for this series, and he said, and I know you love the book of Ruth, and I was like, oh, no problem, because I really love the book of Ruth. And if you look at my notes in my Bible, there's so much in Ruth that I have highlighted and all these little extra notes in there. I'm like, no problem. It's like written itself already. And then I opened up my Bible and I had nothing, like nothing. My brain was completely blank, and I was like, all right, Jesus, so you're really going to show up because I've got nothing. And then Jesus did show up, thank goodness, because, I'm sitting there with nothing. I've got these great notes, and I'm like, I could talk about being like a great daughter-in-law. I could talk about traveling. I don't know. There's lots of things I could talk about. But what the Lord put on my heart was destiny, was stepping into destiny, because ultimately that is what Ruth did. And in the midst of stepping out, it probably didn't look or feel like I'm doing something big right now. In fact, it was probably a little bit scary. Now, if you've never read the book of Ruth, it is in the Old Testament. And if you've never read about Ruth, and I'll give you a little brief overview of her as we go through the message. But these were not good times. This was not like party time in the land of Judah. At that time, in fact, Ruth comes after the book of Judges. And as we read through Judges, what you see is like times were a little bit crazy. It was a little bit California 2017. Okay, there were not good political decisions being made. There were not good environmental decisions being made. You didn't know, am I allowed to use the bathroom, not allowed to use the bathroom, who's allowed to use the bathroom? It was a little bit crazy. And it says in Judges that these were dark times. And what it tells us is there was no king, and the men decided on the rules for themselves. So, I don't know if you have the power to make rules for yourself, like what kind of rules you make for yourself, like what am I allowed to get away with, but nobody else is allowed to get away with it. It makes for a little bit of chaos. So this is what the time is looking like that Ruth is living in. And what happened with Ruth is her mother-in-law, Naomi, was from Judah. And they were now, Naomi and her husband were living in a land called Moab. And then Naomi's husband died. And Naomi's 2 sons died. And she had these 2 widow daughter-in-laws. Now, ladies, I know not all things are equal for us in 2017. But let me tell you this. When you're looking through history and you're looking through what other women have had to deal with in order for us to get to where we are now, as widows, Ruth and her fellow sister-in-law, Orpah, not Oprah, Orpah, had no rights. In those times, and actually this still happens in some other countries and some cultures that still exist today, in those times to be a widow was actually a shameful thing, and you were sent back to your father's home. and your father now had the power over you, again, just like when you were 12, okay? You had no rights to property. You had no rights to anything, really. You were under your father's roof, then you were under your husband's roof, and now you're back under your father's roof. So Naomi decides, she hears, hey, things are starting to look good in Judah again. I'm going to go back home because I have nothing here. My husband's dead. My sons are dead. And her daughter-in-laws, both daughter-in-laws said, we'll go with you. Because really, the options are go to Judah or go back and live with dad, right? So some of you might be like, yes, I would love to live with my parents. That's because you're in 2017, okay? Now, I'm not somebody, I live right next door to my parents, and that's as close as I want to be to living with my parents as much as I love them, because I'm an adult and I've been able to make adult decisions, and if I had to go back and have my dad make adult decisions for me, it would drive me crazy, right? So they get to this point, and Naomi turns to her daughter-in-laws, and she's like, hey, you don't need to go back with me. You go back, stay in your country, stay here, marry somebody else, be fruitful, multiply, have a great life. And Orpah's like, all right, bye. And Ruth is like, no, I'm not going anywhere. I'm coming with you. I'm not leaving here. And when Ruth said that, what she actually was doing was taking her first step into walking her destiny. See, step one, you have to prepare to be determined when opportunity presents itself. This opportunity for something new presented itself to Ruth. She could have said, it will be easier for me to go back to my parents' house because I know life here in my country. I know what is expected of me in my father's house. Instead, she tells Naomi, do not urge me to leave you or turn back from following you. For where you go, I will go, and where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. Thus may the Lord do to me, and worse, if anything but death parts you and me. Okay, she basically said some marriage vows there, right? Only death will come before us. Now, one of the problems with 2017 is when we make vows or we make promises, it's kind of like this, yeah, if I have time, I'll do that. If it's convenient, I'll do that. In this time, they took vows very seriously. If I'm going to make a vow to stay with you till death does us part, that means only death is going to separate us. And when Naomi saw that she was determined to go with her, she said no more. See, determined. Ruth was resolute. She was staunch. She was decided. It was already settled in her heart. I am going with my mother-in-law. I'm going to adopt her country. I'm going to adopt her culture. I'm going to adopt her ways. I'm going to step out and follow God the way Naomi follows God. What we have to recognize is how terrifying this step had to be. Ruth was stepping out. Now, Naomi, again, being a woman, while her husband had property in Judah, she had no claims to it because she was a woman. So we are going to a country where we do not have a home. And from Ruth's perspective, going in as a foreigner, where language is a bit different, culture is a bit different. I don't have the security of a roof. I don't have the security of a career. I don't even know what I'm going to do. I've just decided there is an opportunity, and I am going to take it. And so they traveled on to Judah. And sure enough, they get to Judah, and everybody was like, poor Naomi, you left, and you've come back, and all you have to show for it is a daughter-in-law, a foreign daughter-in-law. Now, I don't know how many of you have struggled with the position of being a daughter-in-law. Sometimes that can be, a little bit of a struggle. Sometimes mother-in-laws don't necessarily want to share their sons with the daughter-in-laws. And, there can be that little bit of a battle. And now we have this daughter-in-law who has stepped out with her mother-in-law. And everybody's like, oh, how sad. All you have is this woman. this foreign woman with you. Basically, oh, Naomi, it would have been better had you just died there too. That was basically the reaction in the culture. What you should know about the Moabites and the people of Judah is they weren't exactly best friends. Okay, this wasn't like, I'm going to go to Canada and people are still going to love me and be nice to me, okay? This was like, I'm going to go to Russia, and some people might like me, and some people might be suspicious of me, and some people are going to want nothing to do with me because I'm from a different land where we haven't always gotten along. Which leads to number 2. As you're stepping out in destiny, not everyone will want to see you succeed. Shocking, right? Not everybody is there cheering you on, hoping you're going to make it. They're not all there backing up and saying, how can I help you get to where you're going? But you need to surround yourself with those who will push you forward, not hold you back. This past year, a little over a year, has been a huge examination of my personal relationships with people and my friendships. And even this past spring, I was speaking at Pioneer High School, and I was talking about healthy relationships. And one of the things I talk about is, regardless of the relationship, whether it's with parents or with friends or, the person you might marry, it needs to be a healthy relationship. And one of the students didn't intentionally challenge me, but her question actually challenged me. And she basically asked, do you walk this out yourself? And of course, my immediate response was yes, right? Because I'm up here teaching this. I'm yes, of course I walk this out. And then I get home, and my whole rest of the night was in shambles because I was thinking about friendships and relationships and thinking about which ones do I have that are still really healthy? Who is still in my corner? Who is it that is still wanting to see me succeed? And there was just this list of going, that was healthy for a season, but it's not now. This one is still healthy. This one is getting healthier. These are the ones that I need around me for the season I'm in right now. And so, I was just a hot mess that night. It was so great. Because I had to look through and say, who is it that still wants to see me succeed? Who is still linking arms with me? When you look through the Bible, we see various people that had people around them to see them succeed. Okay, David had his mighty men. They were there for him. They were determined to do whatever it took to make sure David was going to sit on that throne and be king. Abraham had Lot. Okay, his nephew, think about this story. Abraham comes home one day and he's like, hey, babe, we're going to move. And Sarah was probably like, cool, where to? I don't know. All right. How long are we going to travel? I don't know. And Lot's over there like, yeah, I'm going with you. So we have Abraham and Lot. Abraham had Lot going with him. Moses had Jethro. Jethro was his father-in-law. Jethro worked as an amazing advisor for Moses and pointed out things when Moses was taking on too much and saying, you're one man. We need to divide this up a bit. I can't have you having a heart attack. You're supporting my daughter right now. You need to keep living. I don't want her moving back in my home. That's what he was basically saying. No. Daniel had Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. If you've never read those stories, they're amazing. That's where we get that so great Daniel's fast that we like to do on occasion to torture people. They also went and stood in a fiery pit together. Didn't get burned, but stood in a fiery pit together. Jesus had John the Baptist, and I had to text Jeff on this. I said, I think people are going to get confused when I say Jesus had John the Baptist, because what about those 12 apostles? But this is why I said he had John the Baptist and not the 12 apostles. The 12 apostles were learning from him, and they kind of fumbled the ball a few times. They didn't really grasp in the moment why Jesus was there and what he was doing. They knew he needed him, And they knew he needed to learn from him, but they didn't fully understand what was going on. But John the Baptist, from the time he was in the womb, knew and understood the purpose of Jesus. And Mary, his mother, had Elizabeth. Elizabeth rejoiced when she saw Mary, where most people would have looked at Mary, this unwed, pregnant woman. And Joseph wasn't the father. Where they would have said, hey, you're supposed to go stand in that field. Don't mind us while we pick up these nice shiny rocks. Elizabeth rejoiced. So you need to surround yourself with the people who will move you forward, not the ones that are going to hold you in your spot, not the ones who are going to say, no. Let me tell you all the reasons why you're not qualified for this. No, bad dream, right? Jeff and I just went to Monterey for a pastor's retreat, and while we were there, the other pastors were praying for us. And at one point, I started laughing. They probably thought I was crazy. But they're praying for me, and this woman says, I just see this target on your back. Like, there are people who are trying to take you out. She said, you've got things to say, and people don't want to listen. So if you're sitting here not wanting to listen to me, I totally get it. I already know. And I laughed so hard because I'm like, oh, if you just knew this, like, past year of my life, yes, I know. There is a target. And then she said, but you have some friends who are going to go with you for a lifetime and see you where you need to be. And I just thought, thank you, Jesus, because, I know I talk a lot, and people don't always want to hear what I have to say. But there's people in my life who know and sometimes need to tell me, no, Cindy, you need to go say it. Number 3, do hard stuff. Stepping out into your destiny, walking into your destiny, that's not easy. In fact, if I stepped easily into what I was doing, I would probably question if I was doing the right thing. So Ruth is, she's in this land. They lived in a cave because they didn't have property. So, I won't go camping. So notice I'm not camping in Santa Margarita with my husband and my boys, and my husband's like, I'll get you something to sleep on. And I'm like, no. He's like, we have a tent. No. No. When I think of the past and where I would want to be in history, pioneer days is not it. So, no. These women were living in a cave, and Ruth knew she needed to find a way to support them. So as a foreign woman, a foreign widow, she's having to go out and find work. And so what was great about those times is people don't realize this, but God had already kind of set up our first welfare system, okay? So you had your fields, and there was this certain amount of space that the farmers were not supposed to, like, dig up, or I don't know what the farming terms are, but they weren't supposed to, like, harvest certain areas of their field. They were supposed to leave that for the poor and the destitute, okay? Now, God's welfare system was not, I'm just going to sit here and expect everybody to pay me. You still had to go work for what you were going to get. But if you weren't a landowner, if you didn't own that, there was still a way for you to survive, okay? And so this is what Ruth did. She found a field where they didn't kick her out. They didn't throw rocks at her. They didn't say, go away, foreigner. And so she started, it was called gleaning, to glean this field. And that was hard work. Making the decision to step out of my cave and go to a land, find some land that they'll at least let me pick, and maybe I won't get harassed for the day. That was hard work. That was a determined decision that she had to make. And it's not easy work. If you've ever done any kind of, like, really done picking, not like, oh, I'm going to go pick blueberries for a day, which is what I do, but where you've actually had to do the labor of, in order for my family to survive, I'm going to go pick these strawberries, I'm going to go pick these blueberries, I'm going to go do this hard labor because this is what my family needs. It was hard stuff. So she goes out Ruth 2:2 tells us, and Ruth the Moabitess said to Naomi, "Please let me go to the field and glean among the ears of grain after one in whose sight I may find favor." And Naomi said, "Go, my daughter." 2:7 says, and she said, "Please let me glean and gather after the reapers among the sheaves." Thus she came and has remained from the morning until now. She has been sitting in the house for a little while. So we know she did take a little break, right? Everybody gets a lunch break. So she had been gleaning, and Boaz, the owner of this field, had actually noticed her. He said, "Hey, who's that foreigner?" And his foreman said, "This is who she is. This is what she asked, and she's been working hard." And so she gleaned the field until evening. Then she beat out what she had gleaned, and it was about an ephah of barley. Now, I don't know how big an ephah is, but I'm assuming it's enough to feed her, right? But she gleaned all day, and actually she found favor in Boaz's sight. Boaz had said, "You know what? Nobody harass her." He actually, some translation says, "Nobody molest her." Don't take advantage of this woman who's out there trying to work hard and trying to earn her keep. And then he said, and actually leave some extra for her to pick up. So she had found favor in Boaz's sight. Let's just face it, hard stuff is hard, right? It's not easy. When I started my job at CareNet, I came in and I'm like, yes, I get to talk to teenagers about stuff. And I'm going to get paid for it. My husband and I had just finished being youth pastors, and I was already missing it. And this job opportunity came along. But there wasn't any actual curriculum. That's hard. I showed up. My very first presentation I ever had to give, I was completely on my own. I show up at Rigetti, get everything plugged in. I'm pretty sure I know what I'm going to say. And I pressed power on the computer and got nothing. We unplugged everything, replugged it in, nothing. And so I told the teacher, well, it seems the computer completely died. We can reschedule if you'd like. And he said, let's see what you got. That was hard. Joshua and Caleb, that was hard. Not only did they get to see their promised land, but then they had to go through the consequences of everybody else in their tribe who said, no, we can't do this. That was hard. They had to watch everybody else in their tribe die off in their generation so they could get to their promise. They had to come to the realization, this meant my parents, this meant my siblings, this meant my leader. They're not going to be here with us when we take this land. The apostles, while Jesus was here, life was kind of gravy for them, right? Oh, you're hungry? We got some fish and bread. We'll take care of it, right? You need to pay your taxes? Go catch me a fish. There's some gold coins in them. Kind of gravy. And then Jesus dies. And all of a sudden, it's not so gravy. All of a sudden, I'm having to defend what I now know is true because now I've seen why Jesus is here. And I have to let other people know about this, and it might cost me my life. And for most of them, it did. It was hard stuff. Our sweet Isaac, that was not gravy. Isaac was gravy. What we went through with our sweet Isaac was not gravy. It was hard stuff. This month will actually mark the 7 years since he went to go live with Jesus. But this month also, I was reminded on why we went through what we went through and why we don't hide what we went through with him. Because I had a friend from high school contact me. Her little girl had been battling cancer for almost her entire 5 years of life, and she said, it's coming to an end, and I want to know, after your child leaves you, how do you keep going on? She said, how do you wake up? How do you not give in to the desire of just joining them in that forever sleep? And instantly I was reminded, there's a reason why we don't keep this secret. That was hard stuff. But if it gives me the opportunity to share with somebody the hope of Jesus Christ and the hope of being reunited with those who we've lost way too soon, if it helps me to help others know that every day I wake up is a new day full of new opportunities, then I'm going to keep sharing it. It's hard stuff. But at the end of the day, if they come to Jesus, then that hard stuff is worth it. The fourth step in stepping into destiny is saying yes far more than you say no. Okay? It's easy to say no. Like, it's really easy to say no. But saying yes, especially when you're not sure, yes, we'll throw a pizza party for some teenagers in our house. Yes, we'll keep doing this every week, I guess. Yeah, sure, we'll come on staff. Oh, wait, you want us to lead now? Let me think about that one. Instead, it was saying yes and saying yes and saying yes and saying yes over and over and over again. Not because we were jumping at the desire to have our house full of teenagers every week, but because we knew there was something else that was happening. Saying yes. When my son was getting ready to go, Evan, he was getting ready to go into first grade, I was so excited because this was going to be 3 kids in school for like 6 hours a day. Like, there was so much cleaning that was going to happen in my house, and I was going to have friends over for coffee. And, I had like these plans, and they were great plans. I mean, it was going to be good times. And then my husband said, hey, I think I'm switching careers, and you might have to go back to work. Shoot. Now, one of my great plans was, for years, you need to know that you don't have to always say yes if the season's not right. You have to be able to look at your seasons and say, is this the right season? For years, Jeff and I had gone to the banquets for CareNet, for their fall fundraising banquet. We had gone for years, and there was always an option if you wanted to volunteer. And I never had the time frame when you have 3 kids that are like all in diapers at the same time, and then one's in kindergarten, which isn't really school. They're only gone for a couple hours. You can't do anything in the time they're gone when they're in kindergarten because you have to pick them up halfway through the day. So there was just it wasn't the time for CareNet. So that was one of my big plans when my kid was going into first grade and was going to be gone, all 3 gone. Like, oh my gosh, I could totally volunteer at CareNet now because I will have all this time on my hands. And then my husband said, you might need to go back to work. And I was like, all right. So what a lot of people don't know is when I went back to work, we had said, Jesus, if you want Jeff to be on staff, I'm going to need a job. And I'm the kind of woman, I'm going to work wherever I need to work. Okay, I have it doesn't matter what degrees I have. If I have to work at Taco Bell, that's where I'm going to work. So it came out about the only job I could get was at Michael's. I had even tried to apply at the job I had left when I had my kids, and after I left, they actually dissolved the position entirely. So that wasn't even an option. So I'm at Michael's, and I'm thinking, well, I can work evenings at Michael's. I can still volunteer at CareNet. And then God had this better plan because I was stepping into my destiny. It was, how about we pay you to volunteer at CareNet? Hey, I like that. So I got to start my job at CareNet because I would say yes. I knew my husband needed to be here on staff. And because I'm the kind of person who will do what I can to help my husband succeed, if that meant, hey, I'm going to work at Michael's, hey, I'm going to work at McDonald's, hey, I'm going to work at a gas station, I'm going to work wherever's going to give us a paycheck, something bigger opened up. I never in a million years would have thought that my husband and I would be where we are today. If you would have known me as a teenager and somebody said, that woman, that girl, one day, she and her husband will be lead pastors, you would have laughed so hard and been like, no, you've got the wrong girl. Okay. I sometimes forgot to go to class, like a lot. My husband always remembered to go to class until he started dating me, and then once or twice he forgot to go. I thought curfews were great suggestions. My parents, if you go to the 4-year-old class and say, like, tell me about Cindy as a teenager, they're going to be like, oh, sit down. It took saying yes. Now is not Boaz our kinsman, with whose maids you were? Behold, he winnows barley at the threshing floor tonight. Wash yourself, therefore, and anoint yourself, and put on your best clothes, and go down to the threshing floor. But do not make yourself known to the man until he has finished eating and drinking. It shall be when he lies down that you shall notice the place where he lies, and you shall go and uncover his feet and lie down. Then he will tell you what you shall do. And Ruth said to Naomi, all that you say I will do. Ruth said yes to this plan that probably sounded really crazy. It probably sounded like, what are you getting me into? I'm supposed to clean myself. I'm supposed to get dressed nice. You want me to go lay on the floor with this man who is not my husband. But Ruth said yes. Okay, I'm going to do this. See, the good thing was Naomi already knew what Boaz's character was like. Because I don't think if that was just any Joe hanging out there that she would have been like, hey, go lay at his feet. Let's see what happens, right? There was already a show of character on Boaz's part so that Naomi could give these instructions that Ruth would say, okay, yes, I'm going to do this. Number 5, trust and be patient in the process. So imagine you're a foreigner. You've been gleaning fields that you have no ownership to. And then your mother-in-law says, go and lay with this man, basically. And you say yes. And what Boaz did when he woke up, probably was a little bit of a shock to him too, waking up and there's a woman at your feet. Probably a shock if you're not expecting the woman at your feet, right? I don't think most of you men are waking up in the middle of the night, like yelling, like, why are you here, right? You know why your wife is next to you. But when you don't have a wife and all of a sudden there's a woman laying at your feet, it's probably a bit of a shock. But what Boaz did is he covered her. And before the light came of the day, he sent her back. He sent her with food for Naomi. And she had to trust and be patient in the process. Because what Boaz had to do is he knew there was a closer relative, which meant there was somebody else who had the right to marry Ruth. Okay? So she goes back to Naomi, and Naomi says, how did it go, my daughter? And she told her all that the man had done for her. And she said, these 6 measures of barley he gave to me. And he said, do not go to your mother-in-law empty-handed. That's just good advice across the board. Don't go to your mother-in-law empty-handed. Then she said, wait, my daughter, until you know how the matter turns out, for the man will not rest until he had settled it today. So Ruth has stepped out. She has said yes. And now she has to wait. She has to see, how is this outcome going to be? Are we going to continue living in this cave? What is the next? You will have desires. You will have dreams. You will have words that will be spoken over you. That does not mean that it's happening today after lunch, after church. There is a wait. Abraham was promised as many ancestors as numbered the sky, and he didn't have a child. And he went years without a child. And then it was spoken to him again. And then it was spoken to him again, and I'm sure at some point he's like, great joke, God. This is good. Like this joke. You have to wait and you have to trust the process. Trust in the Lord throughout that process. Be patient in it. Because what comes next is the prize, walking in destiny. Chris, are you a Keys? You can come up. So Boaz took Ruth, and there was some stuff that happened in between then. If you don't know what happened, you need to open your Bible. So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife, and he went into her. And the Lord enabled her to conceive, and she gave birth to a son. And that might seem like, okay, so she got married. She had a kid. How's that walking in destiny? And if you're looking at your life like that, you're probably not seeing what God is laying out for you. When we read in Matthew 1:5-6, it gives us the lineage, in the lineage of Christ, in the lineage of the who's in Jesus' family. It says Salmon was the father of Boaz by Rahab, the harlot. Boaz was the father of Obed by Ruth, the foreigner. And Obed was the father of Jesse, and Jesse was the father of David, the king. And it goes on and on and on until you get to Jesus. Some of you might be looking at your little world and being like, I'm surrounded by toddlers right now. Are you telling me this is my destiny? It could be. You could be raising the next Billy Graham. You could be raising the next T.D. Jakes. You could be raising the next John the janitor who's going to be praying over 600 kids in an elementary school 5 days a week. There is a destiny before you. And some of us have made decisions in our lives where we feel like it's too late. I'm off track. I can't be used at this point. But you can. It's never too late as long as you're breathing. Every person in here has a purpose. Every person in here has a destiny. In Psalms, it tells us every day of our life has been written out for us. They're not blank pages. You have a reason for being here. But I don't have a job. Maybe not yet. The Lord might be preparing you for the job you never dreamed you could have. But have you been saying no to the opportunities that have been coming rather than saying yes? Some of you might be like, oh yeah, I'm walking in my destiny. I'm going to take the boat out today. Destined for the lake. That might be your destiny, but I have a feeling the Lord has more for you. Some of you have come along. You've been destined to be the mighty men. So you need to figure out who is that David. We all have a destiny and we all have a purpose. And I just want to see us all step into it. So people, let's be determined. Let's surround ourselves with the right people. Let's do the hard stuff. Let's say yes more than we're saying no. And let us trust and be patient. Jesus, I thank you for every single body that is in here today. I thank you for every single person who is tuned in online, who's listening, the people who have been kind of questioning, why am I even here? Lord, I believe you have a destiny for each and every one of us. And it looks different for each and every one of us, but you have written out our days. You have made the plans for us. Our desires, Lord, may they line up with you. Our dreams, Lord, may they line up with you. I thank you, Jesus, that we're not doing life alone. You are with us every step of the way. I just ask, Lord, for those who are just unsure, those who have been questioning, those who have been wondering, why am I even here? I ask for revelations for these people. I ask for words spoken over them, words of confirmation for them. I ask for you to awaken dreams that have been buried deep in their hearts. Lord, for those who just, they feel like, you know what, I know I'm doing what the Lord has called me to do. I ask that you keep them surrounded by the right people. I ask that you keep them surrounded by those healthy relationships, the ones that will encourage and come alongside and say, how can I help you get there? And mostly, Lord, I ask for the friends that will keep pointing us to you, for the dreams that will keep moving us closer to you as we walk out these days. I thank you, Jesus, for everything you've done in our lives. I thank you, Jesus, for every destiny in here. Amen. All right, guys. So if your destiny was to go take the boat to the lake, have fun. If you have kids, your destiny right now is to get them from kids' church. I thank you guys. I hope you all have a great, great, great week.